This week we have been talking about where our food comes from and all the wonderful things that are grown or reared here in East Lothian. Now, the story I would like to share with you today is called Yucky Worms, because actually these are vital for healthy growth of plants in our garden, of vegetables in our vegetable beds, and in the fields of our farmers. We need worms, and really we need to find out, are they truly yucky? Because we found a few at school, and I remember some people loved them and wanted to hold them. Other people screamed and shrieked and ran away. So let's find out a little bit more about what worms do for us. So this book is written by Vivian French, and the pictures are by Jessica Alberg. Let's have a dive in. Here we go. One day when I was in Gran's garden, Gran dug up a slimy, slithery, wiggly worm. Oh, yuck! Throw it away! Throw it away? Gran looked horrified. Would you throw away one of your friends? Oh, Gran, you can't be friends with a worm, I said. You can't even tell which end is which. Oh, yes you can, said Gran, and put the worm back down. It gave a kind of squirmy wriggle and disappeared really fast, pointy end first. As the rounded end vanished, Gran said, "There goes its tail." I bent down to look, and I could see it had left a little tunnel. "Where is it gone?" I asked. "Oh, home," said Gran. "It's an earthworm. It lives in the earth." So here we have, this is a diagram of a worm. I will bring it closer so that you can see a little bit more clearly. Here is its brain at the very, very top. Worms have 5 pairs of hearts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It then has a crop where the worm stores its food, a gizzard where the food is ground down, and this one here, these are little polished rings found on adult worms. So you only see these bits on adult worms, these gaps, and then there's more ridges. The skin is covered in mucus for easier wriggling. And then its intestine is down there at the towards the end, which is where all the goodness from the food is absorbed. And then this is my bottom, where the poo comes out. In most gardens, there'll be about 20 worms in every square metre of earth. That's amazing. That's a lot of worms, and that's a sign of a healthy garden. Does it eat earth too, I want to know? Oh, it eats tiny, tiny stones and bits of grit, Gran told me. But worms eat other things as well, like rotting leaves and flowers and fruit and dead insects. They especially like eating at night when it's cool. The stones and grit help to grind everything up in the worm's stomach, and then the worm poos it back out again. Gran pointed at the flower bed. Look, can you see? I bent down and saw a weird long curly worm made of earth. That's worm poo, Gran said. It's called a cast. You know, when you recycle things, when you sort them all out and put them into your boxes, well, worms do it too. There's still a lot of goodness left in the things a worm eats, and when the goodness comes out again as poo, it helps the plants to grow big and strong. And as the worms move around under and over the earth, the poo gets spread around the garden, helping all the plants to grow. So, said Gran, that is why the worms are my friends. And Gran gave me a thumbs up. It's not just their poo that's good for plants. The tunnels they dig loosen up the soil so the roots can stretch out and air and rainwater can get in. Can you see all the tunnels under the ground? Isn't that amazing? It's like a worm city under the ground. But, said Gran, it's dangerous to be a worm. I stared at her. Dangerous? She smiled at me. Lots of animals think worms make the best kind of dinner. Shopping list, worm, 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 worm. Birds love them, and so do moles and badgers and frogs. Hedgehogs and foxes, even some slugs eat worms. And human beings slice them with spades and spike them with forks. It's a tough life. Oh, but cutting them in half doesn't hurt them, Gran, I said. They just turn into 2 worms and keep on growing. Do you think that's true? Gran shook her head. Poor worms. Lots of people think that is true, but it is not. She put her fork down. Time for a snack. A worm's tail can regrow if it's cut off, but cutting a worm in half will actually kill it. Gran had tea and I had orange juice. Can I dig a worm up? I asked. Oh, if it rains, Gran said, the worms will come out by themselves. Worms breathe through their skins. They don't mind the earth around them being wet, but if their tunnels are flooded, they come up to the surface to breathe. They hear the pitter-patter of rain on the top. Sometimes that causes the worms to come up. But there's a reason for that. It's not because they want to dance in the rain. It's because the ground is getting wetter and wetter, and it means they can't breathe. I took a biscuit. What if it doesn't rain? Gran winked at me. We'll use the watering can and we'll pretend. I finished my biscuit as fast as I could. Can we trick the worms now? I asked. Gran went to fill the watering can and I watered the earth. And then I stood back. I didn't want any worms chewing on my toes. They only put their heads out, Gran promised, and it'll be a while before they do. When it's very hot, the soil gets too dry to slither through, so a worm will wriggle down and down and down to where the earth is still damp, curl up and wait for it to rain. That is probably what the worms have been doing recently, because it's been so dry. So the worms just go deeper and deeper to where it's all nice and damp and cool, and they'll just wait. When it's very cold, it'll wriggle down even deeper below the frost level and curl up with the other worms for warmth. Like a little worm hibernation nest. Gran was right. I had time to eat 2 more biscuits before she said, "Look!" "Wow," I said. I could just see the tip of a worm above the earth. "Now watch this." Gran stamped, and the worm disappeared. "Did it see you?" I asked, and Gran shook its head. Oh, worms don't have eyes. They feel vibrations through, and a thump like that will mean that a hungry bird might have been landing looking for its dinner, so they quickly go back down under the soil. Gran dug her fork into the ground and up came lots of wriggly worms. She picked one up and washed it in the watering can. "Mustn't drop it," she said. "Worms can't swim." Gran put the clean worm on some paper and held it to my ear. I could hear a tiny rustling noise. "What's that?" I asked. "Well, they're covered in little bristles," Gran said. "Their bristles help their muscles move." So the worm has rich muscles all the way along its body. To move, it pushes its front end forward like a big stretch, and then it uses its bristles to hold the end in place while the back end is drawn up behind it. The back end bristles stop the worm from sliding backwards, while the front end tunnels forward again into the earth. I love the way worms and caterpillars move. It's like a big stretch, and then the back end follows in. Big stretch, back end follows in, and that's how they propel themselves along the ground. It's amazing. "I've got muscles too," said Jim. I bent my arm so Gran could see. "If you've got so many muscles," she said, "maybe you'd like to help me plant my sunflower seedlings." "Oh, okay," I nodded, and then I thought of something. "When I go to school on Monday, I'm going to tell everyone that I've got lots of new friends." "Good idea," Gran said. "Actually," I said, "I might not actually say that they are worms." How to be a wormologist. Look out for worm casts in your garden or in the park. Leaves sticking up out of the earth, because that means a worm has come up to the surface and attempted to pull the leaf down under the ground. They love nothing more than munching on a nice rotting leaf. Worms on the surface after rain. You can experiment by watering a dry patch of grass or earth and watching to see if the worms come up. Tapping on the ground to see if you can make more worms believe it's raining. Carefully digging up a forkful of earth and counting how many worms you can find. A worm in the hand. When you pick up a worm, remember to be respectful. It's a living creature. Check how it feels. Is it smooth or slimy? Can you feel the bristles on the surface of its skin? Watch how it moves. Is it a youngster or an adult? Remember, the adults have the yellow ring around their body. They're not all ridgy. They have little gaps. And then put the worm back on newly dug earth and watch how it wriggles away. Remember, always wash your hands after touching the worms. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Well, hope you enjoyed that book. That's probably what we would call an information book. Slightly in a story, but packed with loads and loads of facts that helped us learn more about worms. Hope you enjoy going worm hunting. Try your luck at being a wormologist and see if you can test out some of the things that Jim experienced with Grandma. Bye.